We now return to inviting disaster on Modern Marvels.
In most cases, the mistakes made are ordinary ones. They are garden variety, the kind of mistakes that you have made, I have made. What is different about the machine frontier is that the consequences are extraordinary.
Thursday, March 29th, 8:30 a.m. It is now 28 hours since the accident at 3 Mile Island began. The men in the control room have no way of looking into the reactor, but it now seems clear that some of the 36,000 slender tubes holding the uranium fuel have cracked. This is allowing radioactivity to escape into the reactor coolant water. It is imperative operators know how much radioactivity is now in the coolant. Too much, and the nuclear chain reaction could restart. Someone must enter the containment building to collect a sample. It is a task no one wants, but Foreman Ed Hauser agrees to risk his life to take the readings.
He goes in and takes his readings with his Geiger counter. Now, they say that an X-ray is about 1/72 thousandth of a rem. The Med Ed people had originally said that the amount of radiation that was being leaked was no more than you would get in an X-ray. When Hauser went in and he took his readings, he found that there were 1,000 rems per hour bouncing off the walls inside the reactor at 3 Mile Island.
He is in for an even greater scare when he draws the coolant sample. The water from the reactor should be clear. Instead, he stares at a yellowish, fizzing liquid that's giving off 1,250 rems of radiation. It actually vibrates in his hand. If he were foolish enough to continue holding it, the toxic beaker would kill him in less than half an hour.
They knew they had a major problem.
One thing is now clear to the operators at 3 Mile Island and the advisors at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The reactor has sustained massive damage and still threatens the plant and the community. The public is not given these details. In fact, they have been given little information, but it is becoming clear to anyone living near 3 Mile Island that something is very wrong with the nuclear plant they have been told was so safe.
The worst thing about 3 Mile Island is that people were running from something they couldn't see or feel or touch or hear. It's just this haunting, scary feeling of not knowing what you were exposed to.
Pennsylvania Governor Richard Thornburgh is given an optimistic assessment by Met Ed officials, and based on their assurances, he calls a press conference.
I believe at this point that there is no cause for alarm or any reason to disrupt your daily routine, nor any reason to feel that public health has been affected by the events on 3 Mile Island.
But by evening, the amount of damage to the plant is becoming clearer. The basement is now filled with several 100,000 gallons of radioactive water. This water continues to give off radioactive gas that is building up in the building. Operators realize that the gas cannot remain inside the plant. The order is given to vent the dangerous gas into the atmosphere. Governor Thornburgh looks to officials at Met Ed and the NRC for advice. But even the commissioner of the NRC in Washington, Joseph Hendry, struggles to feel in command of the conflicting information coming at him.
There's a wonderful quote from Joseph Hendry to the then Governor Thornburgh that he felt, based on the information he was getting, that they were like two blind men making decisions in the dark. I mean, this is an incredibly disturbing phenomenon. People are making decisions about an extremely dangerous technological disaster based on misinformation, no information, or a lack of information.
Long into the night, Thornburgh and his staff continue to wrestle with the decision of whether to evacuate. 500,000 Pennsylvanians live within a strong breeze of the now dangerous nuclear plant. Their lives could hang in the balance.
He wrestled with this because, as the record shows, his concern was that bad things happen during a chaotic evacuation. You know, people get killed in accidents, you know, looting may go on, you know, that sort of thing.
Thornburgh knows a full evacuation will not be as easy as just reading an announcement. roads will be jammed. And what about the disabled, hospital patients, the elderly, and people without a car? Nothing in his political career has prepared Thornburg for this situation. Friday, 8 a.m. In a suburb of Washington, D.C., members of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's Incident Response Team meet with the Director of Regulation, Harold Denton. Denton is told that radiation levels inside 3 Mile Island now require that they recommend preliminary evacuation to the governor.
Could I get your attention, please? There has been a state of emergency declared on 3 Mile Island.
Already, local authorities are warning the public. But finally, by late morning, Governor Thornburg becomes even more cautious.
Based on advice of the chairman of the NRC, I am advising pregnant women and preschool-aged children to leave the area within a 5-mile radius of the 3 Mile Island facility until further notice.
My sister was in school and parents just came and took their children out of school. There was that sense of panic, that sense of fear.
Although Thornburg's evacuation order applies to only some 40,000 residents, over 100,000 people now take to the road. New York Times reporter Wilborn Hampton remembers driving through the small town of Goldsboro, just across the river from the stricken plant.
It was like driving into a ghost town. The only thing that was missing were the tumbleweeds. Wasn't a car on the street. Drive by the post office, it's locked. Front doors standing open. One house TV was still on. People had just gotten up and left as fast as they could. The fear that existed in the towns around 3 Mile Island was very hard to describe. I'd never seen anything quite like it, and I had covered 2 or 3 wars. But it was the fear of the unknown.
Towns are being evacuated. Radioactive gases drift from the damaged reactor, and core temperatures are still off the chart. Radioactivity in the reactor containment building is so intense, insulation is burning off wiring, causing instruments to fail. Little by little, less and less will be known about the wounded but still very dangerous reactor. Now, an NRC engineer announces an even greater terror may be waiting to strike. By analyzing new computer data, Roger Matson is convinced that melting fuel rods have released a large amount of hydrogen that has now gathered at the top of the containment dome. With the right amount of oxygen, this hydrogen bubble can explode, instantly blowing the top off the building and filling the air for hundreds of miles with deadly radioactive gas.
The world has never known a day quite like today. It faced the considerable uncertainties and dangers of the worst nuclear power plant accident of the atomic age. And the horror tonight is that it could get much worse.
Reporters will come to call this day Black Friday. All who are near the stricken plant hold their breath to see what the next day will bring.